As good a candidate as Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn is as the New Orleans Saints' next head coach, the Saints might be better off steering away from familiarity. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I'm going to tell you about some things you should be watching in tomorrow's game against the Las Vegas Raiders for the New Orleans Saints, including what Spencer Rattler's biggest challenge will be up against that Raiders defense. We're also going to dive into Clyde Edwards-Helaire making his New Orleans Saints debut. What should you expect and what other roster moves the New Orleans Saints made, including a star player who looked like he might be making his way back being ruled out. But we're going to lead everything off today with a look at Mickey Loomis, New Orleans Saints general manager. According to a story from some NFL insiders, Mickey Loomis is expected to stay familiar in his head coaching search, which gives us an idea of who the next New Orleans Saints head coach might be and why the New Orleans Saints should probably go a different direction. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big thank you to everybody who's been here before and who's joining us for the first time. We hope that you'll stick around for daily episodes covering your New Orleans Saints. According to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, the New Orleans Saints general manager Mickey Loomis is expected to stick with a head coaching candidate, quote, that he knows in the head coaching search for the New Orleans Saints. If you're somebody that believed or was hoping that Mickey Loomis would not be the person pioneering the New Orleans Saints head coaching search, this might be a rude awakening for you. But if you've been an everydayer here on the show, you knew that was always going to be the case. When you lose a Hall of Fame head coach like Sean Payton, typically general managers get a pair of hires after that. This will be Mickey Loomis' second and probably last opportunity to put a winning head coach at the helm in New Orleans. And I believe he should be doing the exact opposite of what everyone is saying he's likely going to do, which is, I believe he shouldn't stick with familiarity and that he should instead try to turn the page entirely on the previous regime instead of continuing to play the nostalgia game in terms of what was once successful for New Orleans, because what was once successful clearly does not mean that it will be successful again or at a later time. You ran that experiment already with Dennis Allen. Now go and hire somebody that you don't have a close relationship with. Go and hire somebody that you don't look at and say that person can do things the way that we liked it done when Sean was doing it. Don't do that. Go away from the familiarity. And I want to be very clear. I'm pro Aaron Glenn. If the New Orleans Saints turn around and did stick with familiarity, Aaron Glenn is the best possible hire on the table. He's not Dennis Allen 2.0, although a lot of people like to shortcut that because they happen to coach the same side of the football. To me, that's short-sighted. You look at Aaron Glenn as a former player. He connects with players in an entirely different way. In my opinion, he's a better leader in terms of a vocal leader than Dennis Allen ever was here in New Orleans and probably was in Las Vegas, considering some of the things that we've heard about that time from folks like Amy Trask and other executives that were part of that Raiders team. And he's somebody that has already been able to show that he can navigate injuries on his side of the football. The biggest thing for me, though, is that hiring Aaron Glenn plays into the familiarity factor. So if you're going to do that, then fine. Aaron Glenn's the best possible hire. I am not anti-Aaron Glenn in any way. But I am anti-familiarity. I am anti-doing what's comfortable, and I am pro doing what makes you uncomfortable, which you might remember is something that Mickey Loomis said he was going to do over the course of last offseason, that he's trying to make things uncomfortable. I don't think that the Saints did a very good job of doing that or following through on that message until Darren Rizzi became the interim head coach. Then he made things uncomfortable very quickly, not in a negative way in which it made everybody not want to play or not want to do or not want to compete, but he just made things feel a little bit less settled. Challenged complacency. I don't feel that Dennis Allen ever successfully did that, if he even did set out to actually do that. So I thought that the Saints failed in that area, despite that being a major message in the offseason. Making things uncomfortable was a big part of their messaging. Well, here's an opportunity to actually make things uncomfortable. Go away from familiarity, go away from continuity, and go away from cohesion. Shake things up, change things, roll the dice while actually rolling the dice. Unless the plan is to hire somebody in the short term and then try to sell a better product at a later time. But if you're going to do that, you're not going to do that to Aaron Glenn, who was a staffer, a longtime staffer for this team and somebody that this organization knows, trusts, and has a lot of respect for. They're not going to do that to him. So if the New Orleans Saints are going to go anyway when it comes to this head coaching hire, I believe that doing so in a way that is going to challenge them away from familiarity, continuity, cohesion is going to be the most beneficial way to do it. It's riskier and it's just as likely to end up unsuccessful, but why continue to do the same thing and expect a different result when your messaging has consistently been that doing the same thing and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity? Is insanity what you want to lead your head coaching search with? I doubt it. And I don't think necessarily that Aaron Glenn goes that way if you do decide to go to the familiarity route, but I think it's better for the Saints to pursue somebody that shakes things up, a Liam Coen, a Bobby Slowik. Going after Ben Johnson's an obvious move, but unlikely that the Saints would be able to net him. And so going out for a Mike Vrabel, a Brian Flores, go with somebody unfamiliar. And keep in mind too, that this report, and I will give Mickey Loomis his credit here that is deserved, this story doesn't say that he's going to go with somebody that he's familiar with or that he wants to go with somebody that he's worked with. It just simply says that he wants to go with somebody that he knows or is expected to go with somebody that he knows. Obviously, if the right candidate pops off in an interview room, then you roll with that decision and you don't ignore that. But somebody that Mickey Loomis knows versus somebody that Mickey Loomis has worked with before are two different areas of the criteria, right? He knows Brian Flores because he interviewed Brian Flores along with the rest of the Saints brass as the potential head coach back in 2022 before they eventually hired Dennis Allen. I will say one other thing that's really interesting about this report from NFL Network is that it did cite that Aaron Glenn was close to winning, right? Had just barely been edged out by Dennis Allen for that head coaching role. So the Saints clearly look at Aaron Glenn pretty highly. But in my opinion, if you're going to really do this head coaching search, I think going outside the facility and going away from what's familiar gives you the best chance for success and just as likely a chance of failure. So what's the real risk here? Go for the success. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints made a flurry of roster moves on Saturday, most of which expected. One wide receiver who looked to be making his way back out on the football field has been ruled out, but an awesome story with an LSU Tiger about to make his New Orleans Saints debut in front of his home state, playing for his home state team. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends at Prize Picks. Daily fantasy made a lot more fun and honestly a lot easier as well over at Prize Picks. It's not you versus a bunch of mystery lineups. It's you and your knowledge of your favorite teams, favorite players, favorite sports versus the house. Prize Picks sets projections for each player that's playing in a game that day, that weekend, whatever it is that you're looking for. And all you got to do is pick 2 to 6 of those players and choose whether or not they're going to come in at more or less than those projections. It's just stat projections. That's it. It's nice and easy. And that's why I love Prize Picks. And if you win some of those 2 to 6 picks, you can win up to 1,000 times your entry back. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And even if you're looking in the flex play to help to boost your payouts, you'd also get quick payouts and cash out quickly as well. Prize Picks is absolutely awesome. So here's what we've got for you. There's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. All you got to do is download the app today and use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Yeah, the playoffs are on the way, but you can still make some bucks back, especially after all of the gift spending season, the gift giving season. It's finally over. And so now maybe you're looking to recap some of that cash, recoup some of that cash. You can definitely do that over at Prize Picks. Think about all the things you can spend $5 on right now. What if I told you you could spend $5 to get $250. Sounds a lot better than what you were just thinking about spending $5 on. Am I right? So that's what Prize Picks is going to give you. If you're a first-time customer, you can put $5 down and you can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bucks if that first $5 bet wins. The New Orleans Saints 1.5-point underdogs at home up against a hapless Las Vegas Raiders team. I think the Saints can pull this one out. If you do too, put $5 down on the Saints as a new customer. See if you can get that $250 in bonus bets, or take the Raiders if you're feeling them. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up this, I don't want to call it an emergency episode, but just a short episode. Get you a little bit of Saturday night flavor ahead of the Sunday matchup between the New Orleans Saints and the Las Vegas Raiders. Next thing I want to take a look at here is a debut for a home state guy in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as well as some big news around a fan favorite and wide receiver Chris Olave. We'll also dive into a little bit of what to watch in this game for the New Orleans Saints up against the Las Vegas Raiders. So let's start off with the Saturday roster moves for the New Orleans Saints. As we mentioned already, Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be elevated as a standard elevation, along with fellow LSU Tiger, actually, offensive lineman Austin Deculus in this game. So that will be Clyde Edwards-Helaire's debut as a New Orleans Saint. And considering how things went with the run game last week without Alvin Kamara, Edwards-Helaire might be in a bit of a situation here to where he could get some actual snaps, like some good snaps, because he's going to be the versatile guy. So if he can play the Alvin Kamara role and then let Kendre Miller play his change of pace role, then maybe that elevates Kendre Miller a little bit and certainly puts Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a position to be a major contributor for the New Orleans Saints on a Sunday. We'll see if that's the way that things play out. Austin Deculus being elevated, not a surprise. The Saints are thin at offensive line. They have now sent Eric McCoy, starting center, as well as starting left guard Lucas Patrick, to injured reserve. Their seasons are over. So to combat that, the Saints are elevating Austin Deculus as a standard elevation, but they're also signing undrafted free agent rookie offensive lineman Kyle Hergel to their active roster. Don't expect either of them to start, however. Shane Lemieux, veteran offensive lineman who went in for Eric McCoy last week, will likely start at center, and then at left guard, expect to see Landon Young there, guy who was drafted a few years ago out of Kentucky to be a tackle, who has now turned himself into this year's James Hurst in terms of his ability to be able to move inside and out, either side, all that good stuff. So expect those guys, 67 as well as 66, to be your left guard and center in tomorrow's game up against the Raiders. The Saints have also signed up to their active roster from the practice squad, along with Kyle Hergel, linebacker Isaiah Stallbird. Now, he's still listed as a linebacker positionally, but he's been working with the safeties ever since Darren Rizzi took over as the interim head coach. And so expect him to be a guy that comes in and contributes on special teams, but to spend his time with the DB group on the sideline, warm-ups, pregame, stuff like that. I doubt you'll see him play any defense. He's most likely going to be a special teams guy, but it does give you a little bit of glimpse into the New Orleans Saints injury report on Friday, which did list Rico Payton, the team's backup cornerback and one of their two top gunners, along with safety JT Gray, as questionable because he did not practice on Friday with an illness. Now, this has been the illness that has been running through the Saints locker room, as well as other locker rooms around, a little bit of a virus going about. And so with that, that could mean that Rico Payton does not play. But here's the thing. If Rico Payton doesn't play, I don't expect to see Isaiah Stallbird step in at gunner. I expect to see Willie Gay Jr. step in at gunner. The Saints have loved utilizing him there on special teams. And so then you would see Isaiah Stallbird filling Willie Gay Jr.'s special teams role while Willie Gay Jr., steps out to be the gunner on those punt coverage snaps. Finally, when it comes to roster moves, Chris Olave, who has been making a fantastic comeback, has been working. He was full participant in practice all through what was truly a short and abbreviated week for New Orleans. So a full participation in this week, kind of different than a full participation in previous weeks, especially with the holiday, as well as a short week coming off of a Monday game. You get it. But Chris Olave was full in practice all week, but has been ruled out for this game. That should be no surprise. The surprising thing would be if Chris Olave gets back to the field at all this season, which does feel like a possibility up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He and Alvin Kamara could potentially be back to wrap up the season, week 18. Chris Olave does not need to do that. He could do it, but he doesn't need to. As for Alvin Kamara, he's 50 yards shy, rushing yards shy of his first ever 1,000-yard rushing season. So I could see him really wanting to come back and the Saints force feeding him in the run game to get him to that 50-yard mark, because what else do you have to win this season aside from maybe playing spoiler if you can keep Tampa out of the playoffs? But 2 names to watch next week in Chris Olave as well as Alvin Kamara. Now, this week, one of the biggest names you're going to be watching is Spencer Rattler, who will get his 5th start going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. And here's the challenge that the Raiders will present to him. Are they a good defense? They're actually not bad. They're top 10 when it comes to passing defense. They're top in the top half of the league when it comes to run defense as well. So the Saints are actually outmatched when it comes to their offense versus the Raiders defense, believe it or not. The Raiders defense, in both passing and rushing, ranks higher in terms of high-level major statistics, right? Those don't tell the entire story, but, the base stuff. The Raiders are better on defense than New Orleans Saints are on offense. So here are 2 things that are going to challenge Spencer Rattler a little bit. The Raiders, in their pre-snap disguises, they're one of the teams that uses pre-snap safety disguises more than any other team in the NFL. I believe they're top 2 in the league when it comes to that. Over 40% of the time do they disguise pre-snap. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for Spencer Rattler, because he's going to come to the line, see one look, and then about every other play, right, on average, every other play, he will see a different look once he snapped the football. So his ability to be able to read that, adjust to that, and deliver in the passing game, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but also an opportunity for him to be able to show some skills. The other thing I would watch out for up against the Raiders is that 10.7% of the time, their defense has been in cover 0, the highest rate in the NFL. And according to Next Gen Stats, the only team to be above 10% in the NFL in cover 0. Cover 0 typically is a heavy blitz formation, all man across the board, no zone coverage, but no safeties up over the top. So they're going to try to bring pressure. As we mentioned in a couple of episodes ago, Spencer Rattler was under pressure over 50% of the time up against the Green Bay Packers on Monday night. Teams are going to pressure young rookie quarterbacks until those young rookie quarterbacks make them pay for pressuring them. These cover 0 opportunities and a healthy Marquez Valdes-Scantling, if he's active tomorrow, would be huge for Spencer Rattler to finally be able to have an opportunity to show teams, hey, lay off on the pressure because I'll make you pay for it. So watch out for those 2 things up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Can Spencer Rattler navigate the disguise, and can he deliver on those opportunities deep when they go to that cover 0, the Raiders defense, put some pressure on them, but don't leave a safety hanging over the top. So watch out for he and Marquez Valdes-Scantling in those situations. A couple of other things for you to watch on the pass rush side for the New Orleans Saints. Some opportunity here for guys like Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan to really finish their season strong. Aiden O'Connell, the Raiders quarterback, has seen the number 8 highest time in the pocket of any team, any quarterback in the NFL, 2.79 seconds. So he doesn't scramble, he doesn't move, he doesn't extend plays. He kind of just sits in the pocket, stands, and delivers. Good opportunity there for them to be able to get after a statuesque type of quarterback. Finally, also, the Raiders' pair of tackles, Colton Miller and DJ Humphries, bad. Both of which have allowed a lot of pressure. DJ Humphries has allowed the 8th highest pressure percentage, over 11% amongst all right tackles in the NFL. Colton Miller, the 4th highest, or just over 9% amongst all left tackles in the NFL. Chase Young and Carl Granderson have combined the season for 120 pressures, the 2nd highest amongst any pass rusher duo in the NFL. So those 2 should be eating in this game against a quarterback that's not going to be able to move and get out of trouble. He wants to stand in the pocket. He wants to deliver. Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, and others will look to disrupt that. And don't forget about Brian Brzee and the ability to apply pressure up the middle as well. All right, y'all. There you go. Some things to watch, some things to know, some names to look out for, and an update on the New Orleans Saints coaching staff, at least what the stories are reporting. All of that in this bonus episode of Locked On Saints. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out Locked On NFL. And we'll see you here again live tomorrow after the New Orleans Saints take on the Las Vegas Raiders. Thank you for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me in the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation, I'll holla at you.